So moving on this morning to our second speaker, again, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Soania Mathur from Canada, who's going to speak on women in Parkinson's. She is a family physician based in Canada, but also someone living with Parkinson's herself. So welcome, Soania. With your fan club.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Throughout my journey with Parkinson's disease over the last 25 years, I've always wondered about the variability of this disease, the unique life experiences that each of us have despite the common diagnosis. We all have our own sets of symptoms, our complications, our response to treatment, our trajectory, and that life experience is usually based on many psychosocial circumstances and factors. These commonalities and differences can vary depending on where you live, your age, and indeed your gender. And unfortunately, as I've learned through reviews, there are many unanswered questions when it comes to its management, an underwhelming amount of research into gender-specific challenges, all resulting in a long list of unmet needs that women living with Parkinson's disease, which is all reflected in poorer quality of life. And what are those unique challenges? Well, we do know that this disease seems to present differently in men and women. We know it happens with regards to motor symptoms, non-motor issues, including mood and sleep. And studies have shown that at diagnosis, women tend to have poorer health-related quality of life, more psychological distress, and self-reported disability. And what's more is that we hear from our community that the severity and impact of these symptoms vary according to the hormonal status of women. For example, through their menstrual cycle and after menopause. But there's still such a paucity of information. Despite the hard work of our research community, there's very little dedicated to the differences and the impact based on gender. Major quality of life differences seem to exist, but much remains unknown, and there are so many unanswered questions. Oh, sorry. So recognizing this unmet need, the Women in PD Working Group of the PD Avengers, also known as the Global Alliance to End Parkinson's, was formed. And we collaborated with the Michael J. Fox Foundation's online longitudinal health study of people with and without PD, Fox Insight. Our group, which is made primarily of women with Parkinson's, worked with the Fox Insight folks to develop and deploy a series of surveys exploring and gathering data about the life experience of women impacted by Parkinson's. We developed and deployed two surveys so far. The first, experiences of women with PD, female and health and home life, garnered approximately 3,700 responses. And the second survey on pre, peri, and postmenopause currently has to date over 2,800 completed questionnaires. So women are obviously interested in this subject. When we look at the demographic data, you can see that those that responded were primarily postmenopausal, which is not unexpected, although we do believe it's also important to reach those that are impacted at an earlier age. What did we find? Well, as I mentioned before, from anecdotal accounts, we already knew that there was some variation in Parkinson's symptoms with the hormonal cycle in premenopausal women. This was further cemented by our survey where the majority of women found that their Parkinson's symptoms significantly changed or worsened before and during menstruation. We asked them which symptoms specifically were more problematic during that time. Of the motor symptoms, off periods seemed to be more frequent, followed specifically by tremor and stiffness, and bradykinesia and dystonia followed after that. When we looked at mood and cognitive issues and sleep, we found that women during their period felt more fatigue and had greater difficulty sleeping, followed by anxiety, apathy, and irritability compared to other times in their cycle. And finally, non-motor symptoms of pain, increased sweating, and poor gastrointestinal motility were most problematic. So overall, in most domains, women experienced an increase in their Parkinson's symptoms prior to and during menstruation, which for the average woman means that we are dealing with greater disease burden for a significant part of our monthly cycle. When we asked, when we asked postmenopausal women the same questions, or similar questions, regarding the symptoms they experienced in terms of motor symptoms, they ranked them quite similarly to the premenopausal women, rating stiffness, tremor, and slowness of movement as being most bothersome to them. And again, as with their premenopausal counterparts, sleep issues, fatigue, and anxiety were reported most frequently. But in the non-motor domain, interestingly, the issues that had the most impact were quite different, with urinary problems, loss of smell, constipation being the most concerning. So when we talk about most bothersome symptoms, these are usually those that compromise quality of life, those that would have the most significant impact. And this is exactly why the patient voice is so important and necessary and taken into consideration when deciding the direction of research and the necessary changes in approach to management to optimize care. More evidence to support unmet needs surfaced when we asked premenopausal women about medication effectiveness. When looking at how medications being used to control Parkinson's disease work during their monthly cycle, almost 44% of respondents indicated the medications were not effective but were worse during the week prior to menopause, 30% during menses, and only 4.5% after. There's also a very high rate of unsure, which means that probably women didn't know either they were not aware they should track their symptoms, or that there was some variability that existed at all. We also asked women whether they adjusted their own medication during to maintain function. 60% said they did not. And regardless of whether they self-adjusted or not, the vast majority of women, 2/3, did not talk to their healthcare team to adjust their PD medications according to their symptom changes throughout the month. And most importantly, and this is an important statistic, regardless of which reproductive life stage they are in, over 90% of respondents said their healthcare team did not suggest any change in management based on their menopausal or menstrual cycle status. And women themselves were hesitant. They responded they were hesitant to raise questions specific to their hormonal changes. The top 3 reasons for their hesitation was that they didn't feel that their healthcare team recognized the fact that there was some variability with Parkinson's disease and hormones. They didn't feel that their healthcare team was interested either. And the most common reason that women were hesitant, the third most common actually, to bring their attention to their healthcare team was they felt dismissed about their concerns. The time for hesitancy has passed, and we as women with Parkinson's disease are asking for these unmet needs to be addressed. The data we have accumulated from thousands of women is there for any research to begin taking a look, to develop research questions, and to help us better manage women's care to optimize quality of life. How do we spark change? Some of the questions that we still have are, how can we motivate research directed towards the unmet needs of women with PD to address gender-specific issues and develop evidence-based management guidelines for women? How can we ensure therapeutic clinical trials that are inclusive of women with PD and their unique genetics? Because as women, we are fundamentally different and in a lot of biological ways from a biological standpoint. How can we learn from other models of care? There are other diseases out there that may serve as an example. How can we empower women to seek optimal care for their Parkinson's and educate them on these potential variability of the disease with hormonal status? As women, we need to find our voice and must begin advocating for our care. But first, we need to be educated on what those issues are that need to be addressed, how those issues may be affecting our quality of life, and how advocating for change may actually bring about life experience change. How can we encourage women with Parkinson's disease to develop personalized wellness and self-care strategies? This question is a reminder that we cannot forget or minimize the psychosocial issues that affect women. Women seem to receive less social support and care. Care partner support is lacking, and negative or destructive self-image and loss of femininity are very common. And how can we build curiosity about women's experiences with Parkinson's? The purpose of this effort is to spark a movement towards research into gender differences. There is a need for high-quality research to identify reliable, gender-sensitive markers, biomarkers, and social markers, as well as to develop treatment guidelines that could translate into a more tailored clinical approach for the diagnosis and management of women with PD, leading to improved quality of life for women with this disease. I would like to acknowledge the hard work put in by all these individuals, without which this project would never have come to be. And I'd also like to say a special word of gratitude to Kat Hill, Dr. Christy LaMonica, and Helen Matthews for their sincere dedication, insight, and for allowing me the privilege of working on this project with them. This is about optimizing quality of life for women living with the challenges of this debilitating disease. This is about making a change in the way we do things in order for women to live their best life despite this diagnosis. They say that the first step of change comes from listening, and this is what we're saying. Thank you.
Dr. Mathur, thank you for such a stimulating talk about a timely and vitally important topic, and a very fitting standing ovation from the audience. So thank you very much indeed. We have time probably for one question from the person just at the microphone there before we move on.
Soania, Kevin Kwok, Boulder, Colorado. Thank you so much to you and your team for a brilliant talk and leading this initiative. It's so important. The question that I have is, 4 years ago in Kyoto, one of the plenary session speakers mentioned that there is a very different type of Parkinson's in Asian women. And his comment was actually, women have a greater propensity for Parkinson's than men in Asia. Was your survey able to at least verify or echo some of this finding?
Kevin, the results have just come in, so we haven't actually looked at the ethnic background of our respondents yet. I'm definitely aware of what the statistic you're talking about, and I think it's very interesting. I think, looking at all these different issues, whether it's gender-based or ethnic-based, can really give us information, because the differences that we see can actually lead to some greater understanding of this disease. So it's definitely something we'll look at. We're also hoping that these types of surveys will go even more global, and that women from all over the world be able to access them. We're working with Tash to sort of work with them for an African input, but we're definitely looking to broaden the scope of the study.
Sonia, thank you very much indeed.